You have been eating eggs wrong your entire life and nobody told you. Not because eggs are bad. Eggs might be the most nutritionally perfect food on the planet, but there is a problem, a hidden one. 3 specific foods that most people eat with eggs every single morning are quietly canceling out nearly everything good eggs have to offer. We are not talking about obscure combinations. We are talking about foods on your breakfast table right now, foods that seem innocent, even healthy on their own, but paired with eggs, they trigger a biological conflict that most nutritionists never explain. And the reason you have never heard this? Because food pairing science is one of the most under-discussed corners of modern nutrition. Stay with me. Because what you are about to learn will permanently change the way you think about breakfast. First, let us talk about why eggs are so extraordinary, because you need to understand what is at stake. A single egg contains all 9 essential amino acids in near-perfect ratios. It contains choline, a nutrient so critical to brain function that most people are chronically deficient in it. It contains lutein and zeaxanthin, antioxidants that protect your eyes from macular degeneration. It contains vitamins B2, B12, D, and selenium. Eggs even contain a form of protein called albumin that your body absorbs at a rate of 91%, one of the highest bioavailability scores of any food on Earth, 91%. That means almost nothing is wasted. Or at least, that is what happens under the right conditions. Under the wrong conditions, paired with the wrong foods, that number drops, absorption falls. Nutrients are blocked, and the biological machinery that makes eggs so powerful quietly stalls. Here is what most people do not realize about nutrition. The value of a food is not fixed. It is not a number that stays the same regardless of what surrounds it. The value of any food is determined by context, by what it is eaten with, in what order, and what chemical reactions those combinations trigger in your gut, and eggs, specifically, are more vulnerable to this than almost any other food. Why? Because of how uniquely sensitive their key nutrients are to competing compounds. Let us get into it. The first food that destroys eggs' benefits is one that sits on almost every breakfast table in the world, and yet almost no one connects it to the problem. It is sugar. Not just table sugar, but the hidden sugars in fruit juice, flavored yogurt, sweetened cereals, and the jam most people spread on their toast while their eggs are cooking. Now you might be thinking, what does sugar have to do with eggs? They are completely different foods. Different macronutrients, different digestion pathways. How could one affect the other? Here is the answer, and it is one of the most important things you will learn today. When you consume sugar alongside protein, a chemical reaction begins. It is called glycation, and it is not subtle. Glycation is what happens when sugar molecules attach themselves to protein molecules and fundamentally alter their structure. In your bloodstream, glycation produces compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. AGEs are associated with accelerated aging, inflammation, and impaired cellular function. But here is what concerns us specifically about eggs. Eggs are almost pure protein and fat. They are extraordinarily rich in the very molecules that sugar loves to bind to. When you eat eggs alongside high-sugar foods, you are creating the perfect conditions for glycation, both during digestion and internally in your bloodstream. The amino acids in egg protein, the very chains your body is trying to absorb and use, become partially modified by sugar molecules before your cells can properly utilize them. The choline in eggs, which should travel intact to support your liver and brain, becomes part of a compromised chemical environment, and the B vitamins. Several of them are sensitive to the pH shifts caused by rapid sugar metabolism. But the deeper problem is this. When you consume sugar at the same meal as eggs, your blood glucose spikes. That spike triggers insulin. Insulin triggers inflammation. And inflammation directly impairs the absorption and utilization of the nutrients eggs are trying to deliver. You are fighting against your own breakfast. And here is the part that most people never connect. Orange juice, considered by millions of people to be the healthiest part of a traditional breakfast, contains more sugar per serving than a can of many sodas. Drinking orange juice with your eggs is not a healthy combination. It is a biochemical conflict. The sugar in the juice is actively interfering with the protein and nutrient delivery that eggs are designed to provide. Now, whole fruit is a different conversation. The fiber in whole fruit slows glucose absorption and changes the metabolic picture significantly. But juice stripped of fiber, concentrated in fructose, is one of the most disruptive things you can pair with eggs. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because the second food that destroys eggs' benefits does not taste sweet at all. In fact, most people consider it one of the healthiest foods they eat, and yet its interaction with the specific nutrients in eggs is something that almost no mainstream nutrition source discusses before. I tell you what it is, let me ask you this. Have you ever eaten eggs with a side of something green, something you were told was boosting your nutrition? Hold that thought. The second food that destroys eggs' benefits is raw cruciferous vegetables, specifically raw spinach, raw kale, and raw Swiss chard. Now, before you close this and call it nonsense, stay with me, because this is not an argument against vegetables. Vegetables are extraordinary. But raw spinach and eggs together create a specific nutritional conflict that has been documented in the scientific literature for decades and is almost never taught outside of advanced dietetics programs. Here is what happens. Raw spinach contains very high levels of a compound called oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is a naturally occurring plant defense chemical, and one of its primary behaviors is binding to minerals and certain nutrients, forming insoluble compounds called oxalates. Now here is the critical link to eggs. Eggs are one of the richest dietary sources of a mineral called iron, specifically non-heme iron, as well as calcium and zinc. All three of these nutrients are high priority targets for oxalic acid. When oxalic acid meets iron, calcium, or zinc in your digestive tract, it binds to them and converts them into compounds your body cannot absorb. They pass through you unused. The iron you thought you were getting from eggs partially neutralized, the zinc that supports your immune system partially blocked. And here is the part that makes this so counterintuitive. You are eating two foods that are each individually nutrient-dense, eggs and spinach, both considered superfoods, both recommended by virtually every nutritionist on the planet. But eaten together in their raw forms, they are working against each other at the molecular level. Now, and this is important, cooking changes everything. When you cook spinach, the heat breaks down oxalic acid significantly, lightly. Spinach has a fraction of the oxalate content of raw spinach. So a scrambled egg with wilted spinach is a completely different nutritional equation than an egg on top of a raw spinach salad, same foods. Dramatically different nutrient availability. But oxalates are only part of the story with raw greens and eggs. Raw kale and other cruciferous vegetables contain additional compounds called goitrogens, substances that interfere with iodine metabolism. Eggs contain iodine. Iodine supports thyroid function, which governs metabolism. Energy and weight. Pairing raw goitrogenic vegetables with eggs adds another layer of competition for nutrients. And then there is soy. Soy products, soy milk, tofu, edamame are often consumed alongside eggs, particularly in health-conscious households. But soy contains phytates and protease inhibitors. Protease inhibitors are compounds that directly block the enzymes your body uses to break down protein, and eggs are almost entirely protein when protease inhibitors are present in your digestive tract while eggs are being processed. The efficiency of that protein breakdown decreases. The albumin that is normally absorbed at 91%, that number falls. The amino acids that should be reconstructed into muscle, enzymes, and neurotransmitters. Some of them pass through without being properly extracted. You ate the eggs, you paid for the eggs, you just did not fully receive the eggs. And yet the third food on this list is the one that surprised me most when I first encountered the research. The third food that destroys eggs' benefits is the one most universally paired with them. It sits on the same plate. It cooks in the same pan. It is bacon and processed breakfast meat, sausage, ham, packaged turkey strips. Now I know what you are thinking. Bacon and eggs have been paired together for over a century. They are practically synonymous. How could something so culturally embedded be a nutritional mistake? Here is the answer. It is not about the fat. The fat conversation around bacon has been had 1,000 times, and we are not revisiting it today. This is about something more specific, something called nitrites. Processed meats are preserved with sodium nitrite, a compound that prevents bacterial growth and gives processed meat its characteristic pink color. When sodium nitrite is exposed to amino acids, which are, remember, what eggs are made of at high temperatures or in acidic environments like your stomach, it forms compounds called nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are among the most well-documented carcinogenic compounds in food science. The World Health Organization has classified processed meats as Group 1 carcinogens, the same classification as cigarette smoke, based in large part on the nitrosamine evidence. But here is the specific eggs connection that rarely gets discussed. Eggs are rich in amines, organic compounds derived from amino acids. When nitrites from processed meat encounter these amines in your digestive environment, the conditions for nitrosamine formation are optimized. You are essentially creating a more reactive chemical environment than if you had eaten either food alone. This does not mean eating this combination once will harm you. The human body is resilient, but eating bacon and eggs together every single morning, as millions of people do, is a pattern worth understanding. because patterns are where nutritional damage accumulates, and the loss is not just about cancer risk. It is also about what bacon does to the nutritional environment of the meal as a whole. Processed meats are extraordinarily high in sodium. High sodium intake elevates blood pressure and triggers a fluid retention response that affects cellular function. The choline in eggs, which plays a critical role in cell membrane integrity and neurotransmitter production, requires a stable, low-inflammation cellular environment to be properly utilized. The chronic low-grade inflammation triggered by regular processed meat consumption quietly degrades that environment. And there is one more layer. The advanced glycation end products in bacon. Bacon is a heavily processed, high-heat food. Add to the glycation burden we talked about earlier. So when you combine eggs with bacon and orange juice, you are hitting yourself with 3 simultaneous disruptions: glycation from the juice, nitrosamine formation from the bacon, and a pro-inflammatory biochemical environment that impairs cellular nutrient uptake. That is not breakfast, that is a perfect storm. And the tragedy is that each individual component, eggs, juice, bacon, looks harmless in isolation. Looked at separately, none of them raises a red flag for most people. Looked at together, the picture changes completely. Now let me give you the framework that ties all of this together, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The nutrients in eggs fall into 3 categories that are each vulnerable in different ways. The first category is the proteins and amino acids vulnerable to glycation from sugars, and blocked by protease inhibitors in soy and some raw legumes. The second category is the minerals iron, zinc, calcium vulnerable to oxalates from raw leafy greens and to the pro-inflammatory environment created by processed foods. The third category is the fat-soluble and water-soluble vitamins, choline, B vitamins, lutein vulnerable to oxidative stress, inflammation, and competing compounds in the digestive environment. Each of the 3 foods we discussed attacks one or more of these categories. Sugar and juice attack the proteins through glycation and disrupt the vitamin environment through inflammation. Raw oxalate-heavy greens and soy attack the minerals and block protein digestion. Processed meats attack the proteins through nitrosamine chemistry and create systemic inflammation that degrades the entire nutrient utilization landscape. The solution is not complicated. It is a matter of pairing intelligence. Eggs pair beautifully with cooked vegetables. Spinach, roasted tomatoes, steamed broccoli. Heat neutralizes oxalates, breaks down goitrogens, and actually increases the bioavailability of fat-soluble nutrients like lycopene in tomatoes. Eggs pair well with avocado. The monounsaturated fat in avocado enhances the absorption of the fat-soluble vitamins in eggs, particularly lutein and zeaxanthin. Eggs pair beautifully with herbs. Turmeric, for instance, contains curcumin, which is anti-inflammatory and may actually enhance cellular nutrient uptake. Eggs pair well with whole grains that have a low glycemic impact. Oats, for example, whose soluble fiber slows gastric emptying and stabilizes the blood sugar environment that eggs need to deliver their nutrients cleanly. What eggs do not pair well with is anything that creates inflammation, blocks digestion, or introduces competing compounds that interfere with mineral and protein absorption. That is the framework. And here is the mindset shift I want to leave you with. Most people think about food in isolation. They think about whether a food is healthy or unhealthy, good or bad, safe or dangerous. But that is not how nutrition actually works. Nutrition is chemistry. It is a dynamic, interactive, context-dependent science that changes based on combinations, sequences, temperatures, and individual biology. A food is not nutritious in the abstract. A food is nutritious in a context. And the people who understand that, who think about what they eat together, not just what they eat, those are the people who get the full value of every meal. You just became one of them.